She cheated on me last night. I don't know why I was surprised. Maybe because I had spent years convincing myself that we were different, that the vows we exchanged actually meant something. That when she whispered, "You're the love of my life," she wasn't just saying the words out of habit. But last night, everything fell into place. I had been suspicious for weeks, months, maybe. It started as something small, just a whisper of doubt, a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I tried to ignore. A missed dinner here, a late night out with friends there. At first, I had told myself I was being paranoid. That work was stressful for her, that sometimes people change their routines, that not every shift in behavior was a warning sign. But then came the phone. Nora had always been glued to it, but lately, she treated it like a limb she couldn't function without. She never left it unattended. She angled the screen away from me whenever she texted. If it buzzed late at night, she would grab it so fast it was like she'd been electrocuted. That was when I started watching more closely. Last night, she told me she was meeting up with her best friend, Emma, for dinner. I smiled, kissed her goodbye, and even told her to have fun. Then, 15 minutes after she left, I called Emma. "Hey, it's me. Just wanted to check. Are you and Nora still meeting at that Italian place?" Silence. Then, hesitantly, no? I haven't seen her all week. Why? I don't remember what excuse I mumbled. Something about miscommunication, about how she must have meant someone else. But the moment I hung up, my hands clenched into fists. She lied, and I was going to find out why. I grabbed my keys and drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. But my gut told me exactly where to go. The high-rise hotel just outside of town. The one with a rooftop bar, the one she had mentioned in passing weeks ago. "Oh, my coworkers love that place. We should go sometime." I parked across the street, my heart pounding as I scanned the entrance. It wasn't long before I saw her. She stepped out of a black car, her hand resting lightly on the arm of a man in a suit. He was younger than me, well-dressed, confident. She was laughing at something he said, her body leaning into his just slightly, too familiar, too easy. They walked through the entrance together, and I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could have gone in. I could have confronted her right then and there, made a scene, screamed in her face, asked her how she could do this to me, to us. But instead, I just watched. Because if she wanted to lie, if she wanted to sneak around like a coward, then I would play this game on my own terms. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of getting caught and crying about it like it was some kind of mistake. No, I was going to make her regret it. I was going to destroy the perfect little world she had built behind my back, and I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. This morning, Nora kissed me like nothing had changed, like she hadn't been out all night wrapped around another man, like she hadn't come home smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't mine, like she hadn't destroyed the last shred of trust one had in her. "Morning, love," she murmured, pressing her lips to my cheek, her breath warm and sweet. I fought the urge to wipe it off. "Morning," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. If she noticed anything different about me, she didn't show it. She moved around the kitchen with the ease of a woman who had no guilt, humming softly as she poured herself coffee. I watched her closely, studied the way she carried herself, the way she smiled absently at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She had no idea I knew. Good. I wanted her to keep thinking she was getting away with it. "I need to tell you something," she said, turning to me with that practiced, effortless smile. "I have to go out of town for a few days. Business trip." I nearly laughed. She wasn't even trying to be creative with her lies anymore. "Oh." I raised an eyebrow, pretending to sip my coffee. "Where to?" "Just 2 towns over. The firm is working on a big case, and they need me on site for some meetings." "It's boring stuff." She waved a hand dismissively, like I'd be too uninterested to ask any follow-ups, but I nodded along like a fool. "Of course. Makes sense. When do you leave?" "Tomorrow night." That was all I needed to hear. Tomorrow night, she'd be gone. But not for work. Not for meetings. She'd be with him, and I was going to follow her. That evening, I began preparing. I wasn't just going to confront her. Not yet. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something that would make her world collapse in on itself, the same way mine had. First, I went through our shared laptop. She had always been careful, but nobody was perfect. I found traces of deleted emails, reservations under fake names, even a second Uber account. The pieces of her betrayal fit together like a puzzle, and every discovery made my rage simmer hotter. Then, I made a call. "Hey, it's me," I said when the private investigator picked up. "I need your services." Discreetly, I gave him the details, where she was going, the hotel she'd likely stay at, and the man I had seen her with. I didn't want just pictures. I wanted dates, times, proof so airtight that even she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it. "Consider it done," the investigator said. I hung up, staring out the window at the city lights. Tomorrow, she'd leave. Tomorrow, she'd think she was free. But tomorrow was the beginning of the end. She just didn't know it yet. Nora left at exactly 6:45 p.m., a small suitcase in tow, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She kissed me goodbye at the door, a little too quickly, as if she didn't want me to look too closely at her face. "I'll call you when I get settled," she said with a bright smile, slipping into her car. "Of course," I replied, matching her energy like a man who had no suspicions at all. The moment she was out of sight, I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept my distance, weaving between cars as I trailed her down the highway. The drive was long, nearly 2 hours, but she never deviated from her path, never hesitated. She knew exactly where she was going. This wasn't her first time, and that realization stung more than I cared to admit. When she finally exited into a wealthier part of the city, my heart pounded harder. She pulled into the parking lot of the kind of hotel where rooms cost more per night than my entire mortgage. A 5-star high-rise with gold-trimmed windows, valet service, and a private rooftop bar. She wasn't here for business. She was here for him. I parked across the street and watched. She stepped out of the car, checked her phone, then smoothed her dress, tight, elegant, black, before heading inside. She walked with confidence, without hesitation, and something about that burned more than the betrayal itself. She had done this before. A deep, ugly feeling twisted in my stomach, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't here to feel. I was here to watch her world burn. I sat in my car for nearly 30 minutes, waiting, watching. Then, right on schedule, he arrived. The man from before, the one I'd seen with her outside the restaurant. He pulled up in a sleek black Mercedes, stepped out in a tailored suit, and walked inside like he owned the place. My hands clenched around the steering wheel as I watched him disappear through the revolving doors. 10 minutes later, the private investigator sent me a text. "Room 814. Booked under the name Mr. and Mrs. Carter." I let out a slow breath, trying to calm the fire in my chest. She wasn't just cheating. She was pretending to be married to another man. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, forcing myself to stay in control. I could have stormed in right then and there, ripped the whole thing apart, but that would be too easy, too merciful. No, I needed her to think she was safe. I needed her to believe she was getting away with it, because when I finally confronted her, I wanted the ground beneath her to crumble. I took a deep breath, started my car, and drove away. Tomorrow, I'd return, and when I did, I'd have everything I needed to ruin her. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hollow silence of an empty house. The space beside me, usually warmed by her presence, felt cold and unfamiliar. I imagined where she was, wrapped in expensive sheets, tangled up with him, whispering the kind of sweet lies she used to tell me. By morning, the anger had settled into something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to make her drown in her own lies first. At noon, I returned to the hotel. The private investigator had sent more pictures. Nora and her lover at breakfast in the hotel restaurant, their hands touching across the table, laughing like they were in some perfect little fantasy. She looked happy. Not the polite, practiced smile she had given me lately, but genuinely happy. That part stung the most. I parked in the lot across the street, watching the hotel entrance through tinted windows. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe some sign from the universe, some moment of clarity about what I was supposed to do next. Then, like clockwork, she stepped outside. "Nora," She wore a red dress, her hair curled, her sunglasses perched on her nose as she clutched her phone in one hand and wheeled her suitcase with the other. She looked like a woman returning from a successful business trip, not from sleeping with another man. Her lover followed a few steps behind. A casual distance, just enough to make it seem like they weren't together. But I saw the way he watched her, the silent understanding between them. They had done this before. I could have walked up to her in that moment, said her name, watched her freeze in horror as she realized she had been caught. But that would be too easy. Instead, I let her leave. I let her drive back home, let her walk through the front door like nothing had happened, let her kiss me on the cheek like she hadn't spent the last 2 days betraying me. How was the trip? I asked, watching her carefully. Exhausting, she sighed, dropping her bags by the door. But good. I'm just happy to be home. Home. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. I forced a smile, nodding as I watched her move around the house, unpacking her things, slipping back into the role of my wife like it was second nature. She had no idea I knew. And that was the best part. Because when the time came, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to realize, far too late, that she had been walking straight into a trap. Nora fell back into our routine effortlessly, like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't spent the past 2 nights in another man's bed. I watched her closely, studying every word, every gesture. She was careful. I'd give her that. But now that I knew what to look for, I could see the cracks. She checked her phone more often, her eyes darting toward me whenever a notification popped up. She would leave the room for certain calls, her voice lowering just enough that I couldn't make out the words. But I didn't need to hear them. I already knew everything. That night, while she showered, I went through her phone. She had a password, but she had never changed it from the one she had set years ago, back when trust still meant something. I opened her messages first. There was nothing. No texts to or from him. No late-night confessions, no plans for their next meeting. But she wasn't that smart. She had simply been careful. I scrolled through her deleted messages, and there he was. His name was saved under something innocent, Emma's work, but the messages were anything but. I can still smell you on me. I wish we had more time. Next weekend? Same place? I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She was already planning the next time she'd betray me, and I was going to let her. Because when she walked into that hotel again, I'd be waiting for her. The next morning, I made a call. I need a little more from you, I told the private investigator. What are we looking for? He asked. I need to know everything about him, I said. His name, his job, where he lives, if he has a family. Because this wasn't just about Nora anymore. This man had taken something from me, and I was going to take something from him. 3 days later, I had everything I needed. His name was Daniel Carter, 32 years old, financial consultant, lived in a sleek, modern condo on the other side of town, single, no wife, no kids, which meant he had no idea he was part of someone else's marriage. I sat in my car outside his building, gripping the folder the investigator had given me. It contained his daily routine, work address, gym schedule, even the cafes he frequented. It felt almost ridiculous how easy it was to unravel the life of the man my wife was risking everything for. But the most damning piece of information? This wasn't his first affair. He had a history of it. Brief flings with married women, all carefully hidden, never lasting more than a few months. Nora wasn't special to him. She was just another name on his list. And she had no idea. That night, as we sat at dinner, I watched her. You seem distracted, she said, spearing a piece of steak with her fork. I forced a smile. Just tired. Work has been draining. She nodded, not pressing further. She didn't care. Because she was distracted too. Her mind wasn't here. It was with him. I was thinking, I said, watching her reaction carefully. We should take a trip. Just the two of us. It's been a while. Her fork paused midair. It was subtle, but I saw it. The flicker of hesitation, the quick calculation behind her eyes. That sounds nice, she said smoothly. But work is crazy right now. Maybe in a few months? A lie. She wasn't busy. She just didn't want to risk him missing her. Of course, I said, taking a sip of my wine, hiding my smirk. I knew exactly where she'd be next weekend. And this time, I wouldn't just be watching from the shadows. This time, I'd make sure neither of them forgot me. I spent the next few days crafting my trap. I wanted her to suffer the way she had made me suffer. I wanted her to feel the ground beneath her crack and crumble. And most importantly, I wanted to control how this ended. So, I called my lawyer. I need a favor, I said. What kind of favor? I need divorce papers drawn up, but not real ones. Just something that looks real. A pause. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That evening, I placed the folder on the kitchen counter where I knew she would find it. And then I waited. It didn't take long. The moment she walked in, her eyes landed on it. A thick envelope, with her name printed neatly on the front. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her carefully. "Read it." She hesitated, then slowly pulled the papers out. Her eyes darted across the page, scanning the contents. Dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. My name. Her name. Everything in black and white. I saw the exact moment panic set in. "Wait, what is this? You're divorcing me?" Her voice cracked, her breath coming faster. I shrugged. I thought it was obvious. "You're not happy." "I'm not happy. Maybe it's time to move on." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hands tightened around the papers. "This is sudden," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "I mean, we haven't even talked about this." Talked about it? That was rich, coming from the woman who had spent the last few months lying to my face. "There's nothing to talk about," I said coolly, "unless there's something you want to tell me." A trap. A chance for her to come clean. To tell the truth. To beg. But she didn't take it. Instead, she did something even better. She folded the papers and pressed them against her chest like they were a lifeline. "Can we just wait?" she whispered. "Can we think about this?" There it was. The fear. The realization that she wasn't the one in control anymore. She thought she had time. Thought she was still playing the game on her terms. But she had no idea. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. She spent the rest of the evening watching me, studying my face, measuring my reactions. She was looking for a crack, a sign that she still had control. But she found nothing, because I had already won. I acted normal, ate dinner, watched TV, answered her questions with vague indifference. And all the while, I let her sit in it. Let her feel the weight of those divorce papers, the fear of losing everything she thought she had secured. She barely touched her food. She kept stealing glances at me, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. I could see the thoughts racing through her mind, her carefully built web of lies crumbling piece by piece. She wasn't ready for this, because she thought she still had time. At midnight, she finally cracked. I had just climbed into bed when I heard her footsteps approach, slow and hesitant. "Can we talk?" she whispered, her voice raw. I didn't answer at first. I let the silence stretch, thick and suffocating. Then, finally, I sighed. "About what?" She crawled onto the bed beside me, curling into herself like she wanted to disappear. "I don't want a divorce." I turned my head, studying her face in the dim light. She looked small, not like the confident woman who had been sneaking around behind my back, not like the woman who had been slipping into hotel rooms with another man. No, this was a woman who was terrified. "And why is that?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated. I could see the battle playing out inside her. Tell the truth? Or spin another lie? She chose wrong. "Because I love you," she whispered. The words should have made me feel something. They didn't. "You love me?" I repeated, tilting my head. She nodded quickly. "Of course I do. I know things have been hard lately, but we can fix this. We just need to." "Stop." Her mouth snapped shut. "You don't love me, Nora," I said, my voice calm. "You love control. You love the idea of me being here, waiting for you, while you live a second life behind my back." Her breath hitched. She tried to speak, but I didn't let her. "You think I don't see it?" I asked. "The way you hesitate when I touch you now? The way you're always on your phone, Waiting for him to message you? The way you come home smelling like cologne that isn't mine? Her face paled. I saw it then, true fear. She realized, far too late, that I knew. That I had always known. She started. But I shook my head. Save it. Silence. She sat there, trembling, caught. But she still didn't confess. She still didn't admit the truth. And that was fine. Because I didn't need her to. I already had everything I needed. I rolled onto my side, turning my back to her. Go to sleep, Nora, I said, closing my eyes. You'll need the rest. Because tomorrow, I'd destroy her. The morning after her pathetic plea, Nora was different. She hovered near me like a ghost, touching my arm, kissing my cheek, pretending we were something we weren't. She thought if she played the doting wife, if she rewrote the story in real time, I might start to believe it. She didn't realize I had already written the ending. I played along, smiling when she smiled, nodding when she spoke. I let her believe she had bought herself more time. Then, I made my move. Let's go out for dinner tonight, I suggested casually over breakfast. Somewhere nice. Her eyes flickered with relief. She thought I was trying. She thought she was winning. I'd love that, she said, squeezing my hand. I smiled back. If only she knew. I had spent the past week planning every detail. The location? An upscale restaurant. One of those places where the wine costs more than a mortgage payment and reservations are booked months in advance. I made two. One under my name. One under his. Daniel Carter had no idea what was coming. That night, Nora dressed like a woman with a second chance. She wore a navy blue dress, the same one she had worn on our anniversary years ago. I wondered if she even remembered, or if it was just another calculated move to make me believe she cared. You look beautiful, I told her as I buttoned my cufflinks. Her smile was warm, genuine. She thought she had one. God, she had no idea. The restaurant was busy, low candlelight flickering over polished tables and soft conversations. I pulled out her chair, let her settle in, then ordered a bottle of wine. She smiled at me over the rim of her glass, drinking in the illusion I had built for her. I let her talk, let her ease into the moment, let her believe that everything was fine. Then, right on schedule, Daniel arrived. I saw the exact moment she noticed him. Her breath caught, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. She turned her head slightly, just enough to confirm what she already knew. It was him, sitting 3 tables away, with his fiancée. Yes. I hadn't told her about that part, because Daniel Carter wasn't as single as he had made himself out to be. He had been playing her just as much as she had been playing me. Nora's face drained of color. Her eyes flicked between him and the woman at his table. A woman who, as far as I knew, had no idea she was engaged to a man who spent his weekends sleeping with someone else's wife. Yet, I watched the panic bloom across Nora's face, the gears turning behind her eyes. She looked at me, waiting for some sign that I had orchestrated this. I smiled. She realized, all at once, that I knew everything. She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she reached for her wine. Are you okay? I asked, my voice the perfect mix of concern and curiosity. Why, yeah, she stammered. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You're a terrible liar, Nora. She flinched like I had slapped her. Then, before she could speak, I glanced toward Daniel's table and raised my hand. His fiancée saw me first. She smiled politely, about to look away, until I motioned for them to come over. And Daniel? Oh, he knew. The way his entire body went rigid, the way his eyes darkened, the way he realized, far too late, that he had walked into something he couldn't get out of. Nora's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Don't, she whispered, her voice pleading. I pried her fingers off me one by one. Too late. And then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I watched her world burn. The moment Daniel and his fiancée reached our table, I saw the truth crack wide open in Nora's eyes. She knew there was no escaping this. No lie smooth enough. No excuse clever enough to untangle the mess she had wrapped herself in. Still, she tried. Ethan, she started, reaching for my hand again. I pulled away. Sit, I said, gesturing to the empty chairs across from us. Daniel hesitated, his jaw clenched, but his fiancée, Lauren, I now knew, gave him a confused look and sat without question. I'm sorry, Lauren said, glancing between us. Do you all know each other? Oh, sweetheart. Not yet. I met Daniel's gaze, watching his confidence drain second by second. Yes, I said, leaning back in my chair, watching as both of their worlds teetered on the edge of destruction. We know each other very well. Nora looked sick. Daniel's hands curled into fists beneath the table, his mind racing for an exit. Lauren laughed lightly, still unaware. Oh, that's funny. I don't think Daniel ever mentioned. Of course he didn't, I said smoothly, because that would have ruined the fun, wouldn't it, Daniel? He knew then, knew that I had planned this, knew that I had orchestrated every part of this moment. I let the silence stretch, let them both sit in the thick, suffocating realization that this wasn't coincidence. This was Judgment Day. What is he talking about? Lauren asked, looking between us. And Daniel? For the first time since walking in, he looked at Nora. He wasn't smirking now. No charm, no arrogance. Just fear. That was all it took. Lauren turned to Nora, her expression sharpening. Wait, what is going on? I took my phone out and placed it on the table. Then, with the calm of a man who had nothing left to lose, I pulled up the photos. Daniel, Nora, the hotel, the text messages. Lauren's entire face drained of color. No, she whispered. No, that's not. Oh, it is, I said, tilting my head. He didn't tell you, did he? That your fiancé has been screwing my wife for months? Her breath hitched. Then, slowly, she turned to Daniel. Tell me it's not true. Daniel said nothing. Because what could he say? I had buried him. Nora was frozen. Not crying. Not apologizing. Just blank. Like her mind couldn't process the complete destruction happening around her. Lauren's hands trembled as she grabbed the phone from the table, scrolling through the proof, the texts, the photos, the receipts. Then, with deadly calm, she stood. I want you to die alone, Daniel. She ripped the ring off her finger, dropped it into her untouched wine glass, and walked away. The splash echoed like a gunshot. And Daniel? For the first time, he looked panicked. Lauren, wait. She didn't wait. She didn't even look back. And just like that, he lost her. Now it was just us. Me, Nora, Daniel. The wreckage of their lies strewn across the table between us. Nora finally spoke, her voice weak. Ethan, please. Please what? I asked, tilting my head. Forgive you? Pretend none of this happened? Hold you while you cry? I leaned in closer, my voice dropping. You killed our marriage the second you crawled into bed with him. She flinched. Daniel looked ready to bolt. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Nora sat there, pale and trembling, her hands clutching the edge of the table like she might fall apart if she let go. Daniel still hadn't moved. He was staring blankly at the wine glass where his now former fiancée had left the engagement ring, watching it sink into the dark red liquid like his entire life had just imploded. Good. I wanted them to feel it. The weight of their betrayal. The collapse of everything they thought they had built. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Well, I tapped the table twice. That was fun. Daniel's head snapped toward me. His jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might break his teeth. You set us up, he hissed. I raised an eyebrow. And you, his hands curled into fists. You think you're the only one who's been cheated on before? You think this is going to make you feel better? I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Oh, Daniel, I said, shaking my head. This isn't about feeling better. It's about making sure you both never forget me. Nora finally found her voice, but it was barely a whisper. Ethan, please. No. I cut her off, my voice sharp. She flinched. You don't get to beg now, Nora, I said coldly. Not after everything you've done. Not after every lie you told. Every time you came home to me with his hands still on your skin. Her face crumbled. No, I repeated, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. We're done. You're done. She sucked in a shaky breath, blinking rapidly like she was trying to keep the tears from falling. Ethan, I made a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary, I said. A mistake is leaving the stove on. You made a choice. Her face twisted in agony. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she choked out. I smirked. No? How was it supposed to be, Nora? You keep me at home, playing the role of the loving husband, while you sneak away to your little five-star fairy tale with him. Was that the plan? She shook her head rapidly, her whole body trembling. I never wanted to lose you, she whispered. I leaned forward. You lost me the first time you let him touch you. Her breath hitched. Silence. Then, Daniel let out a bitter laugh. You know what? Screw this, he muttered, pushing his chair back. He stood abruptly, yanking his wallet out of his pocket and throwing a few bills onto the table. I'm done with this whole goddamn circus. He turned to Nora, his expression flat. You're not special, by the way, he said, his voice cruel and sharp. You were just another distraction. Her entire face shattered. I smirked. There it was. The moment she realized she had nothing, she reached for him, desperate. Daniel. But he was already walking away, leaving her there. With me. I took my time finishing my drink. Then, when I was ready, I stood. She looked up at me, pleading. Ethan, the house isn't yours anymore, I told her. I sold it last week. She gasped. You, what? Oh, I smiled. Did I forget to mention that? Yeah. You might want to start packing. Her hands trembled. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. She broke then. Completely. Tears spilled over. Her lips parted in silent horror. Good. I wanted her to feel it. To feel everything. I slid $100 bill onto the table. For the wine, I said coolly. Then, without another word, I walked away. I didn't look back. Not when I stepped out of the restaurant. Not when I walked past Daniel, who was standing by the valet, running a frustrated hand through his hair like he was still trying to figure out how the hell everything had collapsed around him. Not when I got in my car and drove away. I had spent too much time looking back. Now, it was time to move forward. The house was empty when I got home. Not that I expected her to be there. She was probably still sitting at that restaurant, trying to piece together the ruins of the life she had just lost. I stood in the middle of the living room, scanning the space where we had spent years together. The framed pictures on the walls, the coffee table where we used to sit on lazy Sundays, the couch where she had curled up against me so many times, whispering that she loved me. I had loved her. God, I had loved her. But that was before. Before I saw her for who she really was. Before I realized she had been slipping away long before she ever touched another man. I inhaled deeply, then exhaled. And for the first time in months, the weight in my chest didn't feel quite as heavy. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. Nora. I hesitated for half a second before opening it. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Please, can we just talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Then, slowly, I typed back. There's nothing left to talk about. I hovered over the send button. Then, at the last second, I deleted the message, blocked the number, and moved on. 1 month later, I was in a new city, a new apartment, a new life, and I was happy, happier than I had been in years. One evening, as I sat at a quiet cafe, sipping my coffee, a woman walked past my table and accidentally bumped into me. Oh, God, I'm so sorry, she said, laughing as she steadied herself. I looked up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the past. I saw possibility. No worries, I said, smiling. Can I buy you a drink? She tilted her head, considering. Then, she grinned. I'd like that. And just like that, my story began again. If you like the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.